So friends, Judge Tanya Chutkan just released some 2,000 pages of the evidence in Donald Trump's federal prosecution in Washington, D.C. That is the appendix to Jack Smith's earlier filing. But due to some heavy redactions, and I mean heavy redactions, we're not learning that much new about the evidence of Donald Trump's crimes. But we may be able to take something away from the nature and number of redactions that we see in those 2,000 pages. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, it was just yesterday that Donald Trump and his lawyers filed a motion with Judge Tanya Chutkan in his federal case in D.C. for trying to steal the 2020 presidential election, asking her, urging her, begging her not to release the evidence, not to release all of the attachments to Jack Smith's motion, what they call the appendix, the grand jury transcripts, the FBI witness write-ups, etc. And it took Judge Chutkan all of just a few hours to deny Donald Trump's motion. And today, she released the appendix, the 2,000 some odd pages detailing the evidence of Donald Trump's crimes. But before we turn to the newly released documents, I want to just take a minute to read a very brief passage from Judge Chutkan's order denying Donald Trump's request to keep all that stuff hidden from public view, because Judge Chutkan directly and expressly calls Trump out and says, "You are the one trying to engage in election interference in connection with the litigation in this criminal case." Here's what she said. As the court explained, there is an important presumption in favor of public access to all facets of criminal court proceedings. Yet, defendant Trump claims that the asymmetric release of charged allegations and related documents during early voting creates a concerning appearance of election interference. There is undoubtedly a public interest in courts not inserting themselves into elections or appearing to do so, but litigation's incidental effects on politics are not the same as a court's intentional interference with them. As a result, it is in fact defendants' requested relief that risks undermining that public interest. If the court withheld information that the public otherwise has a right to access solely because of the potential political consequences of releasing it, that withholding could itself constitute or appear to be election interference. The court will therefore continue to keep political considerations out of its decision-making rather than incorporating them as defendant requests. Any argument about what needs to happen before or shouldn't happen before the election is not relevant here. So friends, can I just translate that from legalese into English? That's Judge Chutkan saying very pointedly, no, you, Donald Trump, are the one injecting politics into this criminal case. You're asking me expressly to make decisions about how I should go about litigating this case based on the election, because you're saying, Judge, don't release the evidence, the appendix, the attachments prior to the election. That is urging the court to do something for political reasons. She said, I will not do that. The public has a right to see this information. Indeed, there is a strong presumption in favor of all aspects of criminal cases and criminal litigation being open to the public. But Trump and his lawyers say, we don't care, Judge, we want you to make decisions for political reasons. And she said, I will not. And she ordered the release of those documents. So let's turn to the new reporting, and then let's talk about what we can glean by the fact that when these 2,000 documents were released, it was something of a redaction jamboree. Headline: Special Counsel releases trove of redacted documents in 2020 election subversion case against Trump. And that article begins, Special Counsel Jack Smith on Friday released nearly 2,000 heavily redacted pages of documents in his 2020 election subversion criminal case against former President Donald Trump, revealing snippets of the evidence Smith relied on to charge the former president. Most of the pages are completely redacted and believed to include grand jury transcripts and notes from FBI interviews conducted during the years-long investigation. The documents that are visible largely contain information that's already been released publicly, including a transcript of Trump's call with the Georgia Secretary of State after the 2020 election, where Trump asked him to find votes, photos of the 2020 fake elector certificates, and Vice President Mike Pence's letter to Congress explaining why he could not reject congressional certification of the election on January 6th, 2021. Okay, friends, so even though we didn't learn much that was new about the evidence of Donald Trump's J6 crimes, what can we glean from the fact that these 2,000 pages were heavily redacted? I mean, entire pages, just black bars, black bars, black bars. Well, here's my take on that. One of the reasons prosecutors redact information from filings that are released publicly is to preserve ongoing investigations. What do we know about others who are being criminally investigated for the crimes they committed on and around January 6th? Well, we know there are a series of unindicted co-conspirators. Jack Smith put those unindicted co-conspirators in the first Trump indictment, and then when he pared it down a little bit and released a second or superseding indictment after the Supreme Court conjured up out of whole cloth presidential immunity, and Jack Smith needed to pivot, needed to adjust his case to account for that Supreme Court pronouncement that presidents can commit lots of crimes against the American people with immunity from prosecution. Yeah, that needs to be undone. But we already know there are lots of co-conspirators who were part of Donald Trump's conspiracy, his corrupt scheme to try to steal the 2020 presidential election, and none of them have been indicted federally yet. So I think it's actually fair to assume that lots of the redactions in the 2,000 pages of evidence involve ongoing investigations of those co-conspirators and probably lots of other folk who may have criminal liability for being part of Donald Trump's corrupt scheme. You know, think back to Watergate, right? Watergate took years to work its way through the criminal justice system. There were 69 indictments and 48 convictions. And when you look at the crimes committed by Richard Nixon and his co-conspirators, those crimes look like shoplifting offenses as compared to what Donald Trump and his criminal associates did on and around January 6th. They tried to upend our democracy, right? They tried to completely run roughshod over the expressed will of the American people, the American voters. They tried to steal a presidential election. So I know it feels like justice is taking forever to get here. But Jack Smith, I believe, is just getting warmed up. And that's why I think we see page after page after page of nothing but redactions, nothing but black bars, largely because of what I suspect is the ongoing investigation that will produce more federal indictments, probably in the near future. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.